My problem is that I am somewhere between a pessimist and a realist. My name is Phil Ayers, and I am 26 years old. I love women and have dated them since high school and college. I have had sex with many women. My problem is that I can't bring myself to trust them. I would like to find that one special woman so I can love her, grow with her, and start a family. Since I started dating, I've liked most of the women I've dated, but I'm afraid of falling in love. I don't want my heart to be broken. I'm terrible at explaining myself. Perhaps I should start from the beginning. I come from a family with 2 brothers and 1 sister. All of them are older than me. We were 15, 13, 10 years old, and I was 5 years old at the time. It all started when my mom went with her girlfriends to a bachelorette party. I don't remember much of it, but a lot of it was passed down to me as I got older. My dad didn't trust my mom. I heard it was because he cheated on her with a few girls at the bar. I believe that since he was cheating, he thought my mom probably was too. He asked my brother to watch us for a couple hours and ordered us pizza for dinner. He waited 2 hours before he went to pick up my mom. He overheard her say where they were going. The rumor was that he followed Mom and her friends to a motel that had a lounge. When he got there, the women were sitting with a group of men. Mom and one man took the elevator up. Dad followed and waited 15 minutes before knocking on the door and saying, "Room service, extra towels." The man opened the door and Dad saw Mom naked on the bed. He hit the man in the head with a right cross. The man fell down and Dad kicked him in the gonads. Mom screamed. Security showed up and arrested Dad. The mom came home in a cab and the dad went to the police station where he was detained overnight. The man did not press charges because he was also married and simply told his wife that he had gotten into a fight. The next day, Mom and Dad had a big fight and Dad went to a lawyer and filed for divorce. They both stayed in the house, but Dad lived in the basement. Our house was very unhappy, but we all survived. After the divorce, Dad moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. It was only a block away, so we kids could visit him any time. The funny thing is, my parents still loved each other. Both my dad and mom attended our family gatherings and treated each other with respect. They also attended most of our school events. Neither of them ever remarried, but I heard that they dated other people. My older brother Alan was 22 years old when he met a girl named Beth. They talked about how much they loved each other, and Alan asked for her hand in marriage. They seemed like the perfect couple, hugging and kissing all the time. They had a daughter, the sweetest creature. She was my niece. Beth wanted to go to the 5-year reunion. Alan had to work that day, so Beth went alone. She was mad at Alan for not taking the day off. Alan felt bad about not being there for her, so he asked to be let off from work after half a day. He worked the day shift. His mom was babysitting at her house, so Alan came home, cleaned up, and went to surprise Beth at the reunion. He found Beth hugging and kissing her former high school boyfriend. No one in attendance knew Alan, so he didn't have to hide. He watched as her ex-boyfriend groped her, running his hands under her dress. He watched him pull down her panties, and she smiled. That's when she saw him for the first time and screamed, "Alan, what are you doing here?" The big question is, why is he holding your panties? Don't come home tonight. Mommy's having a baby. As for you, buddy, if I see you again, we're going to be going around in circles. Everyone around them in the hall heard everything. Beth yelled for Alan to wait, but it was too late. Beth and her friend became the topic of discussion at the reunion. Alan went to a lawyer, and 3 months later, they were divorced. They hadn't been married a year, so they had nothing to share. They rented an apartment, and Alan let her stay there. He just had to pay child support. He could see the baby as often as he wanted. Beth wanted him back, but so far it hadn't happened. Charlie, my other brother, was an ordinary guy. He went to college and went on dates. He ended up with a good-looking woman. He worked at a lumber mill, and she worked as a secretary. They moved in together, and their lives seemed happy. They seemed like the perfect couple. They dated for 2 years before he asked her to marry him. After the birth of their second child, his wife stopped working to stay at home. When both children went to school, Dana decided to go back to work. After 6 months, it was as if Dana had changed. She started dressing sexier to work and staying late more often. Charlie sensed something was wrong because their sex life had greatly diminished. Of course, he thought it had a lot to do with taking care of the kids. Dana mentioned that she had a sleepover coming up on Friday. She and another secretary had to go to a business meeting, and it was too late to drive home. She would be home on Saturday. She and Dolores, the other secretary, would be staying in one room, and the two bosses, Art and Bob, would be staying in the other room. He told her he didn't like the idea, but didn't stop her. She replied that he didn't trust her, even though she had never done anything wrong. Immediately after work, she went to Dayton. Dana's mother was watching the kids, so after coming home from work, Charlie decided to go to Dayton. It might have made Dana angry, but he couldn't sit at home and wonder what was going on. He hoped he was wrong. He got to the hotel around 8 o'clock. Then he checked at the front desk to see which rooms the men were staying in. Since he had given the names of the men, the girl working there told him the room numbers. Charlie decided to go to the lounge and order a drink before doing anything else. He saw Dana with two men and another woman in a booth near the back entrance. He took his drink and moved to a small table where they couldn't see him. Around 9 o'clock, they all got up and walked to the elevators. Charlie followed them 20 minutes later and headed for one of the two rooms. He knocked and hoped for the best. The door was opened by Dolores. He didn't know her by name, but she was with Dana. Behind her back, taking off his shirt, stood one of the two men. "I'm sorry, I must have the wrong room." Charlie was afraid his suspicions had been justified. He knocked lightly on the other door, and the man opened it slightly. "Can I help you?" "Yes, I'd like to speak to my wife." Charlie pushed the door open and saw Dana grab a blanket to cover herself. "Charlie, what are you doing here?" "Are you hiding your naked body?" asked Charlie. "I'm checking on my cheating wife. The kids are with your mother. I suggest you don't come home for a couple days. I'll be out of the house by Monday. It's all yours. Bob or Art, whoever you are, I'll contact your employer. You two have a nice evening." The man retreated to the door, raising his hand and clenching it into a fist. "Don't be a fool, asshole! I'll send you out the second Tuesday of next week. If I ever see you again, I'll probably do it anyway. Right now, you're not worth going to jail over." Boiling with anger, Charlie drove home. The adrenaline was more than enough to keep him awake. Dana called his cell phone half a dozen times, leaving messages. He hadn't read any of them. By the time Charlie got home, it was deep morning. He rested for a couple hours and then started packing up all his things. When he was finished, he left her a note telling her that he wasn't interested in any of her excuses and was contacting a lawyer. 6 months later, they divorced. My sister Sue had been married twice before. At the age of 21, she married a real estate agent. He was a pretty slick conversationalist and probably talked her out of her pants. Anyway, she got pregnant and Roger said he was going to marry her. He told my father that he was in love with her. They seemed happy, but 3 years later, she got pregnant with her second child. During her pregnancy, she walked into his office and caught him having sex with his assistant. During the divorce, Roger said he thought Sue had cheated on him, too. The baby was born the following month, and Roger requested DNA testing for both children. The test results showed that the first child, a girl, was his. The second child, a boy, was not his. This meant he only had to pay child support for one child. Sue said she had sex with an ex-boyfriend she had before she met Roger. According to her, she still loved him and called him to tell him about the baby. He was happy about it and said he had always loved Sue. They ended up getting married shortly after her divorce from Roger was final. This brings me back to the question of why I am afraid to get married. It's like my family has been spoiled. All of their marriages looked like they would last a lifetime. Of course, I didn't believe in witchcraft, but there had to be something special for a marriage to last. I've been an insurance agent for 5 years now. I own the agency, which is unusual for a guy my age. I have 4 agents working for me. I also have a secretary, but I've never dated any of the women in my office. I did have a longtime friend, Mary, who was the kind of person who lived in the neighborhood. She literally lived next door to my family. I think she was the closest thing to a buddy of mine. She was a year younger than me and was a tomboy. I was always a bit of a wimp as a kid. I hardly ever played sports. I played the piano and later learned the guitar. Kids at school would push me around and Mary started to fight me. In middle school, I asked my dad if I could join a gym. I started taking bodybuilding classes and went to them for the next 7 years. I didn't want relief muscles, but six-pack abs. In high school, Mary and I didn't socialize much. She played all the girls' sports. We were still friends, but we weren't as close. I still considered her my friend and tried to attend most of her games. She played softball, basketball, volleyball, and participated in track and field. Needless to say, she was very popular. I started dating her my senior year of high school. I asked Mary if she wanted to go to the prom. She said she was going with John Manning. He had invited her 3 weeks before. John was named prom king, and Mary was a junior in high school, so she couldn't be queen. I asked Lisa, who, like me, was a bit of a nerd, and she agreed to go with me. Her mom and my mom were friends. We had a good time, and I treated her with respect. I didn't have sex with anyone until I was in college. I was a business management major and only had 2 years to study. I wanted to go away to college to get away from my family. I loved them all, but I needed to be alone. I came home for Mary's graduation. What a party it was. I think almost everyone from her class attended. I was lucky if I got to talk to her for about 10 minutes. I heard she was prom queen her senior year. That didn't surprise me. She was going to go to a state university on an athletic scholarship. I don't even know what sport. In college, I met a lot of girls and had sex with a lot of them. I started coming out of my shell and became a little popular. The girls seemed to like that I was a little shy and played the piano. At different parties, they would ask me to play. Some of the girls told me they were looking for the right man. Something told me that a marriage with any of them would not last. I stopped looking for that special woman. I decided that if it was meant to be, it would happen on its own. I talked to many women about their wants and needs. Some of them seemed genuine, but I think most were just telling me what they thought I wanted to hear. I was a few years out of college, was in the office, and then the receptionist called me and said a client wanted to see me. I asked her if any of the other agents were available, but I was the one the client asked for. I told her to send her over. I got up to greet the client and was shocked to see Mary. I have to admit that I was shocked. "Mary, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since prom night. What can I do for you?" "Well, Phil, I graduated from college and now work as a teacher at a local school. I bought a car and thought of you when it came to insurance." My stomach rumbled, and for some reason I got nervous. "No problem. We can take care of that." I made her sit down and filled out the form, taking her information. She looked even more beautiful than I remembered. Finished with her business, I asked her if she had time to have lunch and talk about old times. She smiled and said she was starting school starting Monday, but didn't know if she should. She was seeing someone. "Mary, it's just lunch with an old friend. It's just been so long since I've seen you." "Okay, but I'll drive myself and meet you there. I'm so happy to see you again." We decided to meet at a restaurant near the office. Parking the cars, I opened her door. She smiled as she got out of the car and we walked inside. We sat in a booth against the back wall. We both ordered coffee and she asked me to speak first. "Mary, you were always my buddy and friend while we were growing up. When we moved on to middle school and then high school, you played all the sports. I was so proud of you. I attended almost all of your games." "I didn't realize you went to them. I thought I saw you a couple times, but I wasn't sure. Why didn't you come and talk to me?" "You were out of my league. You belonged to the elite part of the school. I didn't want to embarrass you. I was more of a geek squad at the time. I think it's safe to say now that I had a crush on you all through high school." "I can't believe you didn't come and talk to me. You've always been my friend." "I asked you to prom, but you already had a date. I saw you there. You looked so beautiful. My first date was with Lisa Allen, and I had a good time. I remember kissing her when I walked her home. I thought of you when I kissed her. The next week, I found out she was dating a jock, and he bragged about having sex with her. I felt a little silly. The next year, I went to your graduation. I heard you were the homecoming queen. That didn't surprise me. I remember you kissed me lightly when saying goodbye. I'll never forget that. Now it's your turn to tell me something. You seem to know everything I did in school. I want you to know that I thought about you and everything we did together as kids. Between studying, practicing, and playing, I didn't have a lot of free time. I know you think I was popular, but I tried to treat everyone the same. I didn't date much because my parents were pretty strict. I went to a state college for 4 years on a volleyball scholarship. I wasn't a big party person, but I still went to a few. Not every girl goes to college to party. I went for an education, and I needed to keep my grades high to get scholarships. I earned a bachelor's degree in teaching. I taught in Dover for 2 years, and then a position became available here in my hometown. I applied and got the position. I found out you had an insurance agency, and I came to you. Mary, the big question is, Who are you dating and how serious is it? Phil, I'm sorry, I kind of lied to you. I was afraid that if I told you the truth, you wouldn't want to go to lunch with me. I don't really have a boyfriend. I have a son who's 2 years old. After I graduated from college, I went to a big party. My so-called beau put a drug in my drink and then used me. There were tears in her eyes. After that party, I never met him again. A couple months later, I contacted him and told him I was pregnant. He said he wanted nothing to do with the baby. He told me to get an abortion and gave me $900 to pay for it. He told me that he wasn't the only one who used me when I passed out. I sat down and cried. There was no way I would abort my baby. If you don't want anything to do with me, I understand. Does he know you gave birth? I asked. No, he thought I had an abortion. He doesn't even know the baby exists. Mary, I'm sorry you went through all that. I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. You're still my friend, and I wish I could see you more often. What did you name your baby? Philip, after an old friend, she smiled. I'm surprised you're not married. Are you a hardened bachelor? I just haven't found the right woman. Mary, I'm afraid to get married. You were there for me when my parents, 2 brothers and a sister, got married. They all seemed happy, and then they got divorced. I don't want that to happen to me. I want to meet that special woman who will love me for who I am and with whom we can truly trust each other and start a family. We had lunch, and I asked her if I could see her again. She replied that she would love to. She had moved in with her parents, and her mom took care of Philip when she worked. I asked her if I could stop by to see her on Saturday. She was a little nervous and said she already had plans for Saturday, but she was free next weekend. I said I would call her midweek and maybe we could make an appointment. She smiled and agreed. I gave her a little hug and we said goodbye. I wrote down her address and phone number on the insurance forms. I sat there and remembered all the good times we had when we were kids. I thought she was already married. It surprised me that she had a child, but I figured she would be a great mom. She didn't tell me much about the man she got pregnant with, but I knew I would never forget the few things she did say. I had his name and the dealership he worked at. On Saturday, our office was only open half a day. I decided to drive by Mary's house. She was standing on the porch, dressed, and walking down the stairs holding a man's hand. He was wearing a suit. They were getting ready to get into the car. She looked up and saw me walk by. Her face reflected surprise, and I felt like an idiot. I just kept driving. My mind was spinning with everything I could think of. Was it a relative, a boyfriend, a date? I was sad, but maybe I had a chance with her. I stopped by my mom's house, and she asked me to stay for lunch. I mentioned to her that Mary had come by the other day and bought insurance. Mom asked about her, and I said she was as beautiful as ever. I mentioned that she has a son, but she is single. I went home and had a hard time falling asleep. Seeing Mary again, I just couldn't sleep. I decided that I should try to forget about her. On Monday, I went to work and tried my best to stay focused. The receptionist asked me if everything was okay. I told her I had a little trouble sleeping over the weekend. Shortly before 5 o'clock, she said Mary Moore wanted to see me. I told her to send her over. I got up and motioned for her to sit down. We both started talking at the same time, so I spoke first. Mary, I'm sorry I drove by your house. I wasn't following you. I was thinking about you and drove by on my way home. I'm sorry. Phil, I'm the one who needs to apologize. I should have told you I had a date on Saturday. Jim is the principal of the school I used to teach at. He asked me out 2 weeks ago. We've been out a few times. I know he's in love with me, but I like him as a friend. Do you still want to go out on Saturday? Yeah, I was actually thinking we'd go to a baseball game and maybe have dinner depending on how much we eat at the game. I'd like to meet little Philip. Sounds good to me. What time is the game? I'll be there at noon. The game starts at 2. She stood up and I hugged her lightly. She looked up at me and kissed me softly. I'll see you Saturday. I thought about her all week. I couldn't get her out of my head. I wondered if I could be just friends with her. Time would tell. She was the one person I could never forget, and I had never done anything with her other than the one kiss at her graduation. I walked in on her on Saturday, and she was dressed for the game. She was wearing a tank top and a cap. Her hair was gathered in a ponytail. She looked like a sexy teenager. She invited me in and introduced me to her parents. They remembered me as the little neighborhood boy who always played with Mary. The little boy walked into the house, half staggering. He walked over to me and I took him in my arms. "Hi, Philip. Nice to meet you." Mary said he had just started talking, so it wasn't easy to understand him. I thought he said Dada, but I wasn't sure. He had never had a father, so I couldn't understand where he got the word from, but I thought it sounded good. She took it and kissed him on the cheek, then handed it to my mom. Then we left for the game. Mary said Philip used to call her father Dada, and since I was a guy, he called me the same thing. He didn't know many words. She was fun to be with. We got a hot dog and a drink. We decided we would go out to eat afterward. It was like we were old friends again. I didn't want this to happen, but my feelings for her were coming back. I took her hand, but she didn't stop me. She just smiled. I bought Philip a t-shirt and a Nerf ball. Mary said I shouldn't do that, but I told her I wanted to. We went to a restaurant that I knew had good food. We ordered mixed drinks and dinner. The owner of the restaurant came over and asked if I would play a couple numbers for them on the piano. They had a band coming in, but it wouldn't start playing until an hour or so later. The restaurant wasn't crowded much as the game was over. I looked at Mary, and she said she would love to hear me play. They changed our table to the one near the stage. They brought drinks, but said they would hold our dinner until we were ready for it. The manager took the microphone and said they would be honored to have Phil Ayers play a few songs on the piano for them to listen to. I asked Mary if she wanted to hear anything special. She replied that anything would do. I played a few of my old favorite songs. When I was done, I took the microphone and said that my last number was for a very special friend. I looked at Mary and played You Don't Know Me by Willie Nelson and Ray Charles. You hold out your hand to me and say hello. And I can barely speak, my heart is beating so hard. And anyone can tell that you think you know me well, but you don't know me. I put everything I had into this song. Tears came to my eyes as I sang it. Conversations in the restaurant stopped while they listened. I assumed that almost everyone knew the words to this iconic song. After all, I had never known the art of making love. Though my heart ached with love for you, afraid and embarrassed, I missed my chance. The chance that you could have loved me too. When I finished, several people stood up and clapped for me. I bowed and walked back to Mary, who also had tears in her eyes. The manager came over, thanked me, and told me that dinner was on the house. Mary told me that she enjoyed all the songs, but especially the one dedicated to her. She knew it was for her. We ate dinner and several people stopped by our table to thank me for playing. I drove Mary home and asked if I could see her again. She replied that any time and kissed me. It was real and passionate. I told her I would call her sometime during the week. She mentioned that she was teaching 7th graders and had volleyball practice after school. She was an assistant coach. She had games on Tuesdays and Thursdays and practices the other 3 days. What she missed most was being home with her son. Her mom loved her grandson and didn't mind watching him. Since I was the boss and could set my own schedule, I decided to leave the office early on Tuesday and Thursday. I would stop by the Moore's house and pick up Philip. Since I didn't have a car seat, I borrowed the one Mrs. Moore had. After putting him in the seat, I went to the volleyball game. It really surprised Mary the first time. She could hardly pay attention to the game. After the first time, she got used to it. Philip liked to sit next to me and watch the game. When he got tired, he would climb into my lap and take a nap. I loved this little guy almost as much as I loved his mother. I just wasn't sure we were going to get married. We actually kissed, but we didn't do anything else. That's why I thought I loved her so much. Just being with her made me happy. After the game, I always took him to his grandmother's house. One Friday, when I got to their house, Mary's mom looked a little nervous. I asked if she was in trouble, and she said that a guy who was dating Mary had called. He wanted to know if she was going with him on Saturday to a teachers' conference in Columbus. I didn't know what to say or do. Mary had never told me about the conference. We hadn't made any plans for that Saturday. I figured I would just show up and we would play according to circumstances. I was getting ready to go home. I didn't feel like seeing Mary at all, but she walked in the door. She smiled until she saw the look on my face. "Phil, what's the matter? Is Philip okay?" She looked at me and then at her mother. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Jim called and asked what time you wanted him to pick you up tomorrow to go to the convention." Oh, God. I told him last time we went out that I wouldn't go with him. He told me he wouldn't give up that easily. I'm not going, Phil. I never told you that because I completely forgot. You have to believe me. It was over a month ago when he told me about this conference. Mary went to the phone and called Jim. When he answered, she told him she wasn't going. She then asked him not to call again because she had a boyfriend she loved. I didn't know what to think or what to do. Mary refused to talk right in front of her mother and me. Phil, I'm so sorry. Things were so good between us. I don't know what else to do. I really love you, even though we've only been together for a month. I've never had these feelings for another man. Please forgive me. I left and headed home. I didn't visit him that weekend. On Tuesday, I stopped by to pick up my little friend. He came right up to me and his grandmother smiled. We went to the volleyball game and Mary smiled broadly when we walked in. After the game, she hugged and kissed her son and then hugged and kissed me. I did the same thing on Thursday. One thing I forgot to mention. When Philip and I went to the game, there were always women sitting next to us. I didn't know any of them, but they would introduce themselves. I guess they just liked playing with Philip. But Mary told me they better not put makeup on me. That made me laugh. I guess Mary was like me and was a little insecure. Thursday after the game, I drove Philip home. I said goodbye to him and headed home before Mary got there. Friday, I went to work, and when I got home, Mary pulled up in my driveway. Mary, what are you doing here? Is Philip okay? He's fine. I stopped by the house and talked to my mom. I told her I was coming to see you and wouldn't be back until morning. She reached into the back seat and pulled out her overnight bag. Phil, I think we both have a problem, and I'm here to help solve it. I'm going to make love to you. I love you, and only you, and I'm going to prove it. We went inside, and I ordered Chinese takeout. After eating, we drank some wine, sat on the couch, and started fucking. I had already gotten to second base when Mary got up and took me into the bedroom. I undressed her and then took off my clothes. She moved to the middle of the bed, and we kissed many times. She was the first woman I had ever given everything I had to. I rolled off her to catch my breath. I had never had such strong feelings for a woman. She rolled over onto her side and snuggled up against me. I love you, Phil Ayers. We kissed, and after a while I got up to get us something to drink. She got up to go to the bathroom and clean herself up a bit. We went back to bed and had a glass of wine each while talking. I told her that I loved her, but didn't know what to do. She said I should marry her, then she could move in with me and make love all the time. She knew I was afraid to get married. I was always afraid it wouldn't last. She said she would do anything I wanted as long as we stayed together. I took our glasses and set them on the end table. Then I dimmed the lights and we made love for another portion. We fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I found myself in the arms of her back. We got up and she went to take a shower. I put on a t-shirt and boxers and made us some coffee. Mary came out dressed and looked so beautiful. She said she had to go home and take care of Philip. I told her I had a lot of work to do today, but I would see her on Sunday. We kissed, and I walked her to her car. I was hurt by what she said about how she got pregnant. I loved her and Philip. When she talked about our wedding, I wanted to believe it would work out, and more than anything, I wanted to be the boy's real father. So I went to the office and learned everything I could about the guy who was the father. I went to his dealership in Dover, where I looked at a few cars and told him I might be coming back. Instead, I followed him as he was leaving. He went into a restaurant nearby and sat in a booth. I stopped at the bar and ordered a draft beer. I then approached him and asked if I could join him, saying I had a few more questions about a couple of his cars. Later, when he went to the restroom, I took a potent sleeping powder and slipped it into the beer. I knew he'd pass out in half an hour. We got to talking and he told me where he went to college and how his father owned a dealership, so he always knew where he was going to work. He said he felt very tired and decided to go back to the dealership. He made it to his car and passed out. I bought a DNA test kit and rubbed it in his mouth. I let him just lay on the seat and sleep and drove home. Sunday I went to Mary and Philip's house. We decided to go to the street fair so he could go on the kiddie rides. While Mary went to get ready, I took a DNA test and rubbed it into Philip's mouth. On Monday, I went to the clinic and asked if the y'all could send 2 tests for me. I gave my name and said second child. I figured they thought I was testing to see if I was the father so I wouldn't have to pay child support. They told me it wasn't like TV and would take a few weeks. I told them it was fine. As I drove home, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. Wouldn't Mary be upset about this? How do I make her realize how much I love them? The next few weeks were business as usual. Philip and I went to games, even away games. Saturdays were our day to do things together. Sundays we would go to my mom's or stay at Mary's and have dinner. 3 weeks went by and I got a call from the clinic. They said they had gotten the results of the DNA test and I could come and get them. The doctor handed me the results and told me I was the boy's father. I smiled and thanked him. I couldn't wait to tell Mary about it. I called her before practice and asked if she would go to City Hall with me. She asked why, and I said it was a surprise. I stopped by her house and asked her to get Philip's birth certificate and bring it with me. "Phil, what's going on? Is something wrong? I've never seen you like this." "Do you really love me, Mary?" "You know I do. What's going on?" "I want to make Philip my biological son. He'll be one from now on if you agree. If you do, just go along with whatever I tell the clerk." "Phil, what have you done?" Mary shouted. "Please, Mary, just do what they ask." We went into the house and I told the clerk that I wanted to legally change my son's last name. I said I wasn't around when he was born, so my last name wasn't on his birth certificate. Now I'm back, and I want it corrected. I put his certificate on the counter. The old birth certificate didn't have the father's name on it. "Sir, you must show proof that you are his father." Mary looked confused. I was sure she had questions. I hoped that after I explained everything, she would realize how much I loved her and little Philip. I placed the DNA tests proving I was his biological father on the counter, along with his driver's license. The clerk checked the paperwork to verify the test results and then filed an application to change the birth certificate. Mary had to show her driver's license to verify that she was the mother on the certificate. Once all the paperwork was received, he was legally required to become Philip Brian Ayers. I thanked him and picked up little Philip. Then we walked to the car. "Are you going to tell me how you did it? You know that makes you totally responsible for him. I love you, but I can't believe you did it." I love him, and I want him to have a real father. He should never know another. For a few minutes, we sat in the car. Mary stared out the window but didn't say anything else. My heart raced as I waited for her to speak. "You did this for us? For me?" "Yes, I would do anything for you, Mary." I was about to say something else, but Philip started whimpering. It was getting late, so I figured he was hungry. I drove across town and stopped at a McDonald's. He grinned when he saw where we were. We ordered his baby food, and Mary and I each ordered a burger and fries. I put Philip in the booster seat, and Mary sat next to him. Even though the restaurant was crowded and noisy, I didn't notice anything. All I could see was Mary. I reached into my pocket and knelt down in front of her. "Mary, you know how much I love you. Will you marry me?" "Oh, God, yes, yes, I will marry you." She was smiling and crying at the same time. I put the ring on her finger and gave her a quick kiss. We ate and watched little Philip make a mess, but he loved it. I couldn't believe how much I loved this child. When we got back to Mary's house, I saw Mr. Moore sitting in a soft chair. Mrs. Moore had come out of the kitchen. She must have noticed us smiling because she asked what was wrong. Mary held out her hand and her mom cried. They hugged and her dad smiled at me. When they calmed down, Mary told her parents about going to court. She said that I was now legally Philip's father. Mary showed her a copy of the new birth certificate and told her we would be getting the amended original soon. They didn't ask how we did it, and I didn't put out any information. Mrs. Moore asked when we were going to get married, and I said that was entirely up to Mary. I simply said that I would rather be early than late. We decided that Thanksgiving was only 6 weeks away, and Mary would already be done playing volleyball, so we decided to get married the following weekend. I was still nervous as hell about the wedding, but I truly loved Mary and little Philip. I told Mary that I would make a short list of people I would invite. I didn't want to send out a bunch of invitations. Mary said she would do the same. Mary said she invited some teachers she was friends with and 2 aunts and their family on her mother's side. On her father's side, she invited his brother and their family. I invited the office staff, my two brothers and my sister and their families. When I invited my mom and dad, they said they would come together and were very happy for us. I was so afraid something would go wrong, but Mary kept me grounded on our love for each other. I asked my dad to be best man, and he said he would be happy to. Mary asked her mom to be the matron of honor since she was also her best friend. I asked my brother Alan if his daughter could be our flower girl, and he said he would ask his ex-wife. He then surprised me and said he would bring Beth as a bridesmaid. I invited my brother Charlie, and he was very happy for me. He asked if it was okay to invite Dana, his ex-wife. I told him that was fine. That's how I got to my sister Sue. I asked her if her son Benny could be my ring bearer. Philip was still too young. She said she could, and that she and her husband Richard would be there. I talked to Mary and told her about my family coming. My divorced parents were getting together. My brother Alan was bringing his ex-wife Beth, and my brother Charlie was bringing his ex-wife Dana. And Sue was coming with Richard, her second husband. They all brought their families. Mary looked at me and kissed me. "Phil, it looks like you're getting your family back together. I'm happy they all want to be near you." Our little church was full. Seeing my whole family together made me feel really good. As the children walked down the aisle, one being a ring bearer and the other scattering flower petals, my heart filled with joy. Tears came to my eyes as I watched my dad and Mary's mom act as best man and matron of honor. The music changed, and everyone stood up as my beautiful Mary, with my dad holding her hand, began to walk down the aisle. I couldn't help myself, and tears ran down my face. I knew immediately that I had made the right decision. After we said "I do" to each other, we all went to the hall we had rented. There was a nice buffet set up, and Mary and I were the first in line. We got our food and sat down at the main table. No sooner had we taken 2 bites than everyone clinked glasses, demanding that we kiss. I didn't mind the kissing, but I wanted to eat while the food was hot. After we ate, the band started playing all the songs you hear at weddings. I don't know if I got the chicken song right, but I got Hokey Pokey right. Mary and I stayed away during Bunny Hop, but went back to the YMCA. We enjoyed dancing the slow songs, but everyone wanted to keep dancing. Mary asked me to play the piano. She told her friends that I was really good at playing. I broke down and walked over to the piano and played a couple of our favorite songs. Then I asked my sister Sue to come up and sing a song while I played. She had a beautiful voice. She came over and I told her I was going to play an old Elvis tune called "Loving You." I started playing and Sue sang along. "I'll be all my life loving you, just loving you. In winter, in summer, in spring, I love you, I love you. It doesn't matter where I go or what I do, but you know I'll always be P. Love you, just you, and damn, my sister can sing." It was amazing how quiet it got while I played and she sang. Many couples continued to dance. A few people could be heard singing along with her. I looked at the group and asked them to join in. When they started, I stood up and led Mary out onto the dance floor. My sister continued to sing. "If I'm seen with someone new, don't be blue, don't be blue. I'll be faithful, I'll be faithful. Always faithful, faithful to you." After my sister finished the song, she grabbed her husband and twirled with him in a dance. The band performed the song a second time. When the reception was over, we thanked everyone for coming. Little Philip was heading home with his grandparents. Mary and I went to a motel, but we didn't tell anyone where we were going. The next day we left for Branson for a few days. For Thanksgiving, we went to my mom's house. She had also invited the Moores over. I wasn't surprised to see that my mom invited my dad as well. For Christmas, we went to the Moores' house for dinner. On New Year's Eve, my brother Alan invited us to his party. 2 of my brothers were there with their exes, and my sister was there with her husband. My mom and dad even came together. No one has remarried yet, but it was really nice to see them all together. Mary told everyone at the party that we were going to have our second child in about 7 months. She had gone to the doctor the day before. Everything was going great, and Mary and I were always talking and discussing our differences, which we never had. My brothers told me that communication solves most problems. I couldn't agree more. And thanks to Mary and Philip, I never had any more problems. I loved my marriage.